I was not supposed to work that night. My wife Elena had a fever and a raw cough. So I told the captain I would take a personal day around 9:30. I walked to the 24-hour market on Maple Street to pick up cold medicine ginger tea and a small carton of chicken broth. The sky over Bridgeport, Connecticut was clear, and the summer air felt heavy but harmless. I wore plain jeans, a faded Mets t-shirt, and running shoes. No uniform, no radio, no gun. My badge and duty belt stayed in the bedroom closet because I wanted Elena to rest without the noise of metal zippers and Velcro. The market sat 6 blocks from our townhouse. I knew every cracked sidewalk slab on the route, every porch light that still worked. I paid at the register, thanked the sleepy cashier, and stepped back onto Maple with 2 paper bags. I checked my phone 10:02 p.m. Elena had texted a heart emoji and the word "thank you." I sent one back, slipped the phone in my pocket, and started home. At first, nothing felt off. A late bus rattled past the bright interior, showed maybe 4 passengers. I crossed Lexington Avenue where a street lamp flickered but stayed lit. My mind was on Elena, how I would heat the broth, set her pillows high, and maybe stream an old comedy to make her smile. I turned down Grove, a narrower street lined with small maple trees. Only 2 lamps worked there, so pools of darkness lay between wide spots of yellow light. Halfway down Grove, a van rolled out of an alley without headlights. It stopped in the middle of the road, engine running, no hazard flashers. I slowed, expecting the driver to turn on the lights and move. Instead, the engine cut off, a side door slid open with a soft scrape. I saw 3 silhouettes inside, darker than the dark around them. I thought about running, but I still held 2 paper bags, and the space behind me felt as narrow as the space ahead. One figure stepped out. The person was lean, wearing a hooded jacket. Even in August, another climbed out behind him, heavier hat low on his face. The third stayed in the van shape, barely visible. The lean man spoke, first voice, flat. "You're Officer Reyes?" I said nothing. Trying to keep my breathing quiet in plain clothes, I could have denied it yet. Something told me they already knew the answer. "Hands up," he said, a hard object, probably a pistol, pressed into my ribs from behind. I hadn't seen the third man move, but he was suddenly there. My gun was at home, 6 blocks away on the dresser. I lifted my hands, bags rattling, cold medicine pills tapped against the glass bottle. Zip ties wrapped my wrists before I could lunge or twist. Someone dropped a rough cloth bag over my head. I felt the world shrink to a cotton smell and hot breath. They shoved me into the van, slammed the door, and the engine roared back to life. The ride felt long, maybe 20 minutes, maybe 30. The floor vibrated like metal shelving beneath me. Tools rolled around clanking. No one spoke. I tried to keep my body loose, ready for any opening. But the ties dug into my skin and numbed my fingers. Finally, gravel crunched under the tires. A door opened. Hands yanked me out, and cool, moldy air hit my face. 3 cement steps led downward. I counted them. By the way my feet tilted, they pushed me inside and sat me on a wooden chair. When the hood came off, I faced a bare concrete room, lit by a single bulb hanging from a wire. 1 plywood sheet covered a tiny window high on the wall. A workbench held pliers, screwdrivers, and a coil of rope. The 3 men stood together, hooded jacket lean, red cap heavy, and a silent youngest man, maybe early 20s, eyes fixed on me as if memorizing every detail. Hooded jacket crossed his arms, June 5th, 2017, Route 8, Black Dodge, no headlights. The date clicked. I had been on night patrol when that Dodge flew past the exit ramp. I flicked my lights, chased, and tried a siren burst. The driver never slowed when he swerved toward oncoming traffic. I fired through the windshield. One shot, the car stopped in the median. The driver died before EMS arrived. His license read Jack Harrison, 42, red cap, spoke voice tight. He was our father, the youngest, said nothing, but tears shone in his eyes. Hooded jacket, leaned close enough that I smelled wintergreen gum. I was 12 that night. He said, sat next to him. Seatbelt off, you killed him. I wanted to say their father had robbed 6 convenience stores, that he aimed the car at a minivan, and that the review board cleared the shooting. But every sentence tasted useless in my mouth. They left me there, ankles tied, wrists cut off from blood, hours blurred into a gray smear. They returned twice each day with water and a granola bar. The youngest slid them across the floor, gaze never leaving my face. Sometimes hooded jacket described their father's funeral. The clothes casket and the debt for the burial plot red cap asked if I dreamed of dying. I didn't answer. 4 nights passed. On the 5th, they marched in with rope duct tape, and a shovel-hooded jacket said, "We're driving you into Pine Hollow Forest. Nobody finds bodies there." They taped my mouth and ankles, bagged my head, and dragged me up the steps. The van rattled for what felt like an hour. The smell of pine pushed through the cloth as soon as the side door opened. Crickets sang, the air here was cooler with damp soil under my feet. They half carried me along a narrow path. Pine needles crackling. I heard Redcap mutter, "Just leave him for the animals." Quick, a pistol cocked behind my ear. I waited for the shot and wondered if Elena had found the broth on the counter. 2 loud cracks tore through the trees, but they came from behind us. Not beside me, someone shouted, "Police, drop it." Now, the hand at my shoulder jolted, grip loosened. The men scattered a knife, sliced the bag off my head. Blinding flashlight glare faded into the face of Officer Ricks. My academy partner beard, longer eyes, the same sharp gray. He shoved me behind a tree, cut the zip ties, and kept his gun raised toward the path. "I was camping," he whispered. "Saw 3 guys dragging somebody, took a chance. It was you." He radioed for backup. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting louder every second. Ricks ordered the kidnappers to the ground. Hooded jacket froze. Red cap tried to run, but squad car floodlights burst through the trunks, and a K9 unit charged the youngest, crumpled hands on his head, silent tears streaking his cheeks. Officers flooded the clearing, cuffed the brothers, and pulled the duct tape from my mouth. My lips bled where the adhesive tore skin. Paramedics treated rope burns and gave me water. Ricks kept close, repeating, "You're safe now." Under the flashing lights, his calm voice felt like warm cloth over frostbite. At the hospital, detectives pieced together the timeline. A patrol located the basement 2 miles off Route 25 in an abandoned duplex, evidence-matched chair, ropes, empty water bottles. The district attorney filed kidnapping, assault, and attempted murder charges because I was off duty and unarmed. The case gained extra weight under state law. Alina visited the next afternoon, still weak, but fever broken. She held my hand and whispered, "You left for tea and came back in an ambulance." I told her I should have driven, should have carried, should have noticed the van sooner. She pressed a fingertip to my lips. No more regret. Riss explained later why he was in the forest. He had taken 2 comp days for fly fishing. That night, he hiked the ridge trail, remembering how we camped there as rookies. His flashlight caught 3 figures in the hollow below one with a bagged head. Stooping between them, "Your walk," he said, "the way you lean when your wrists are tied." I just knew. People ask if I hate the brothers. The truth is more tangled. I hate what they almost did. I understand why grief warped into fury, but understanding does not excuse the rope, the gun, the plan to feed me to coyotes. They will face decades in prison. I will live the rest of my life with thin scars around my wrists and a sharper eye for vans. Without headlights, the department reinstated me after 2 weeks of leave. I now carry my off-duty pistol even on short errands. When I pass the shelf with chicken broth and ginger tea, I remember the market bags. Falling from my hands onto Grove Street, I buy extra bottles of cold medicine for Elena. Though her cough is gone sometimes near sunset, I drive up to Pine Hollow. I park by the trailhead and listen to crickets rise with the dark. I think about the path where Hendrick's first shot cracked through the trees, splitting fear wide open so hope could step through. Breath by breath, the forest becomes only forest again. I walk home slower these days, not because I am afraid, but because each corner, each lamp feels borrowed from a night that might have ended in silence. I've been working as a police officer straight after college. I earned a degree in law enforcement and was hired right on the spot. I would say that after almost 2 decades of working as just an officer, I was promoted to a deputy. While I was a deputy, arrest would get harder and I was busier. One example is the story I'm going to tell you. It was the date of October 16th, 2023 at around 7:30 a.m. in Camden County, Georgia. I was driving on an interstate and I noticed a white pickup truck going way over the speed limit at an estimated 100 meters an hour. I put my sirens on and pulled the truck over to the side of the road. I then grabbed my speakerphone from below me and said through the speakerphone to get out of the car. I said this phrase like 10 times with all of my windows down. When this didn't work, I started getting more annoyed and then said, "Get out," like 5 more times, and this time I got out of my car without the speakerphone. My tone of voice had changed into an angrier voice. This then made the driver comply, and he finally got out of his car. When the man got out of his car, I told him to turn around, move to the truck, and put his hands behind his back. He was being aggressive and said to me, "I ain't doing shit." After he said that, I grabbed his right shoulder so I could put him in handcuffs and hoped he would turn around so I could place them on him. When I tried doing that, he swung his hand back. I gave him more orders after that, and he still wouldn't budge. I then warned him that he would get tased if he still didn't listen to me. He seemed to listen to what I just said, and he started to move towards the back of his truck. When he got to the back of the truck, I then told him to put his hands behind his back once again, and he still wouldn't listen. I then told him, "Or else you're going to get tased." He then asked me, "Why am I getting tased?" I then told him without any hesitation that he's under arrest for speeding and reckless driving. He then responded back to me saying, "Nobody was hurt, and how was I speeding?" I was thinking at the second that there was no way he could be that delusional. I then answered his question saying, "You passed me going 100 miles an hour." He then said, "Then that's a speeding ticket, right?" I then answered saying, "Tickets in the state of Georgia are criminal offenses." I argued with him for another 10 seconds and then said to him, "Hands behind your back, you're going to jail." I then tased him before he could say anything else. While I tased him, he stayed in the same position he was. Before I tased him, while he was still being tased, he turned his body facing me and walked towards me. He also started swinging at me, and he grabbed the taser. I then grabbed him and he grabbed me back, which then made him let go of the taser we were now in like some sort of wrestling match. And during the struggle, he grabbed my face and throat. I then reached for my baton and pulled it out. I then struck him a few times with the baton. After I did that, he grabbed onto my mouth again and said, "Yeah, bitch." I then gathered the strength to take out my gun and I fired one shot into his chest, which made him fall to the ground. After that, I told him to stay down twice. I then dispatched on my radio receiver that shots had been fired. I then saw him move his arms on the ground as he was probably trying to get back up. He then put both of his hands on the ground and went into a crawling position. I told him once again, stay down, do not get up. I then saw him collapse back down onto the ground. I said this several more times, and he was continuing to move, but barely soon enough, another cop cruiser came and a co-worker came out of the car and asked if I was all right. I said, yeah. In response, as I was also out of breath, I then put handcuffs on the man, but he wasn't responding at all. Very shortly after, more cops came along with paramedics. The paramedics tried to render aid to the man, but he didn't move or make a sound while they did this. I took a few steps to my car and collapsed in exhaustion onto the car seat. I then walked behind the car, breathing hard, and while I was behind it, I could barely compose myself. A few other officers came to my side, making sure I was okay. And that's when I started to cry. As I was crying, they were all comforting me. This would go on for like another 5 minutes. And then I went back to the police station. I stayed there for an hour, and then the sheriff told me that I could take the rest of the day off, and the next day off. The next few weeks were hard. I couldn't let go of that day. Thankfully, my other co-workers, along with the sheriff, had covered for me on some things. I also found out over those few weeks that the guy I shot was named Leonard Cure. He was wrongfully convicted of a crime many years ago and served the full 16 years he was sentenced to. This made me feel even more sorry for him and his family. Leonard went through so much in prison, and so much as a person more than anyone else should have to go through. No wonder he had so much rage. When I pulled him over, he was probably so psychologically traumatized from his 16 years in prison that he resisted arrest because he didn't want to go back to prison on February 27, 2024. Kerr's family filed a $16 million federal lawsuit against the sheriff's office I worked at, along with me. They alleged that it was excessive and deadly force against Cure that, quote, made me look back on that day, and a part of me agreed with them. I didn't know who the man was when I tried to arrest, and I didn't know his whole life story, and that part just struck me so hard. On February 25th, 2025, a district attorney announced that I would not face any criminal charges in the death of Leonard Cure. October 9th, 2024 is a date I will never forget. It sits in my memory like a deep bruise that will not fade. The clock on my cruiser read 12:57 a.m. when the call came over the radio. Unstable male acting erratic, possible weapon. 44, Lion Terrace, Bridgeport. The dispatcher's tone was tight, the kind that makes the hairs on your arm lift even before you know why. I was riding patrol on the south side, only 4 blocks away. I answered. Unit 12, responding, flipped on my lights and rolled. Night in Bridgeport feels different than day. The streets are smaller. The houses lean closer and porch lights glow like little eyes. The air had a damp chill. because it had rained earlier, leaving every curb shiny. Most nights that wet smell is calming. That night, it felt heavy. The kind of heavy that squeezes behind your ribs. 2 other units slid in behind me. As I parked at the address, it was an older 2-story house peeling paint. A chain-link fence half near the gate, a porch light hung above the front door, but it was tilted, so the bulb cast a crooked circle across the steps. A tall maple in the yard threw ragged shadows over everything, making it hard to see past the porch rail officer. Ruiz reached the steps first. She rapped hard on the door with her flashlight. I stood just to her right. Behind us, officers Lang and Dixon covered the yard. We waited a few beats. No answer inside. We could hear a television, some late-night game show playing way too loud. Ruiz knocked again, louder. The door opened a crack. 2 black men appeared, one behind the other. The one in front wore a round, flat-brimmed hat. The back man was bald and looked younger. They stared at us, eyes flat, no words. The TV noise poured out and then slipped quiet when the hat man reached back and clicked it off. Ruiz spoke first calmly and clearly. "Police, we got a call that someone here needs help. Can we come in and talk?" The hat man didn't move. The bald man leaned sideways like he wanted to answer, but the hat man shifted, blocking him. I saw the younger guy's eyebrows pinch as if in worry, but he kept silent. After a long beat, they both stepped back and tried to close the door. Ruiz pressed her palm against the wood. "Sir, we need to check. Can you unlock the deadbolt?" The hat man ignored her, still blocking the younger one. I nudged forward. "Let him unlock it. Please." Still nothing. I felt the pressure of every second slide off the porch light and onto my shoulders. The situation was small and tight, spaces can blow open fast. I slid my hand to my belt, where I keep a slim folding knife sometimes. An old lock sticks. Sometimes we pop a door to reach someone having a medical crisis. I flipped the blade out and eased it into the gap by the latch, hoping the simple motion might show we meant to solve a problem, not start one behind a hat man. The bald guy suddenly ducked under an arm, twisted the lock, and swung the door wide. "Come in," he whispered. The whisper was odd, too soft, like he did not want someone to hear. I barely had time to wonder who that someone was. The door had not even stopped moving when the hat man spun toward me. His face came within a foot of mine. I smelled wintergreen gum and stale sweat. His voice came out low but sharp. "I'm going to kill you." I saw his right hand dive into his coat pocket. I saw the handle of a knife glint small and bright. Then it was moving. Training says, shout commands, create distance, and draw your weapon. Real life sometimes steals the half second you need to do any of that. The first hit landed in my left shoulder. Hot pain flooded my arm, dull at first, then screaming before my mouth formed words. The blade was out and punching again, this time into the side of my neck. My throat filled with wet heat. Air turned to rust, tasting syrup sound. Left me, my vision shrank at the edges. He hit me a third time above my right ear. It felt like lightning cracking inside my skull. I pushed with everything I had left. My palm found his chest, and I shoved forward. He stumbled back into the doorframe. My knees buckled, but I forced myself sideways off the porch, needing space, needing air. Green grass slid under my boots. I stared at those blades of grass because they were the only thing that stayed still, while everything else spun. Gunmetal thunder cracked twice. My ears rang through the ringing. I caught Ruiz's voice, firm and loud. "Drop the knife. Drop it now." More voices layered in Lang Dixon, even the young bald man crying out, "Stop, stop, stop." I could not lift my head to look. The grass darkened, turning from green to black. As my blood soaked into the blades, I pressed one trembling hand to my neck and felt warm liquid leak between my fingers. Time stretched. Maybe it was 30 seconds. Maybe 5 sirens cut the night M's called by the second car. When we first arrived, the porch light flashed off, then on, as if the house itself blinked. Hands took hold of me, lowering me flat. Ruiz's face hovered above, eyes wide but steady. She pressed gauze to my neck, shouted something I could not catch. A medic slid scissors under my shirt to cut. Away fabric, cold air met warm blood. A needle went into my arm. I saw the front yard spin upward as they lifted me onto a stretcher and locked wheels. The ride to Bridgeport Hospital was a white blur ceiling, lights flipping past, radio chatter, my own heartbeat thudding in my ears. The medic kept talking to me, asking my name, date, badge number. I mouthed answers, but no sound came. He squeezed my hand each time to let me know he understood surgery. Lasted 3 hours. Later, doctors told me the neck wound missed my carotid by the width of a pencil lead. The head strike chipped bone, but did not drive deep. The shoulder cut sliced the muscle, yet avoided the big artery under the collarbone. Inches in luck. That is all that separates a line of duty report from a eulogy. I woke up in intensive care with a tube in my throat. Ruiz sat beside the bed, uniform stained, but eyes bright. She wrote on a piece of paper, "He's alive, 2 rounds to the suspect's lower spine." He dropped the thread. Ended. I nodded, tears sliding sideways into the pillow. I mouthed, "Thank you." She just squeezed my hand. 4 days later, they released me. My wife drove me home silent until we pulled into the driveway. Then she let herself cry long and hard, head on the steering wheel. I rested my uninjured arm across her back and waited until the storm passed. Recovery tasted of metal and plastic bandage tape, pain pills, protein drinks. I slept in a recliner because lying flat pulled at the stitches. The department sent meals checked on us and stacked get-well cards on the coffee table. I spent hours reading them, feeling the weight of every signature, every scribbled, "Glad you're still with us." 3 weeks after the attack, I met with Internal Affairs. Then with the state's attorney, body cam footage showed everything in cold clarity. The man's sudden lunge, my blood spraying the porch rail, Ruiz and Lang firing only when he pivoted toward them again. Knife raised. The shooting was ruled clean. The suspect survived, but the bullets shattered his lower spine. He will never walk and will likely spend the rest of his life behind bars. Trial is pending. I will testify when the day comes. People ask if I felt myself dying. The best answer is that dying felt close, like a shadow leaning over my shoulder, whispering, "Not yet." I remember the grass. I remember thinking how bright green it looked under the porch light, and how strange it was to die staring at something so simple. Then I wasn't dying anymore. I was living, and every breath since feels like interest paid on borrowed time. I returned to duty at the end of January, after physical therapy had rebuilt the strength in my arm. The first night back, I sat in my cruiser outside the station, hands on the wheel, letting the engine idle until my pulse slowed to normal. When I finally clicked the radio and said, "Unit 12 in service," the words trembled, but they came out. I'd drive past that house. Sometimes the porch light has been fixed. It hangs straight, now steady and dull. A new family rents the place. A young couple with a toddler who leaves plastic toys on the steps. One afternoon, the mother waved, not knowing who I was or what had happened, where she stood. I waved back, grateful for ordinary life. I have a small scar on my neck, another above my ear, and a line across my shoulder. A map of that night etched into skin, they remind me of how fast calm turns to chaos, but also how skill backup and plain luck can pull you from the gap between heartbeats. I still love this job. I still believe most calls end with someone safer than before we arrived. And on nights when the air smells of rain and porch lights look like eyes, I remember October 9th and tell myself, stay sharp, stay kind, and go home.